Hey, welcome to the craft room. I'm really glad you're here. We're going to be working on a new block today, and it's called Blooming Love. I've been wanting to use this fabric for such a long time, and with it starting to feel a little like fall out there, I thought let's pull it out and let's use it. So I'll show you. This is by Fancy That Design House. It's distributed by Moda. Such a beautiful fabric. I love a lot of hers because they're such rich colors. This is also hers. Try to get some sunshine on that. Yeah, so cute. And then this brown is also hers. And you may recognize this from our Stars quilt. We just used some of this there as well. But such beautiful colors. And then I picked a yellow and a teal to kind of go with us because we're pulling those colors for sure in there. So I'm really excited for this one. This is a free pattern, and I'm gonna make sure that I add the link there for you so that you can print it out. I even went and printed out this brand new today just to make sure that you could still have access to it, and you can. So go download this one, print it out, and let's make this together, okay? This is by Robin Pickens. She is a quilt designer and a fabric designer. And this is part of the Moda Blockhead series. So if you're not familiar with what that is, Moda, the fabric company, kind of puts on this series where they ask quilt designers, quilt shops, quilty people in general to create one block, and every week they kind of feature this block, and it's kind of like a little quilt along. It's really fun. So many creative people out there, so many amazing blocks. But at the end of this series, then hypothetically, you'll have this giant sampler quilt of all these different blocks. So typically they do have a theme, but obviously you're up to each person's interpretation of that theme. But it gives you such a fun, wide variety, and probably even some blocks that you're like, this is out of my norm, but it's good because it pushes you out of your comfort zone, and it's really fun. So this one is actually from a few years ago. This was March of 2020. Although I really feel like it was a lot longer ago than that, but I guess not. The date on her website says March of 2020, so I guess I have to believe it. But this is her pattern. So go download it so that when I talk about it, I'm not like in that gray area of copyright laws. Okay? So hurry, go download it and let's make this. So let's talk about this one for a second. So this is the block. So we're making 4 hearts, but they kind of come together in this like flower pattern, which is so cute. So this one has very few pieces actually. So we cut 3.5 inch squares of the color and 3 7/8 inch squares. Okay. The 3 7/8 we're going to cut at a diagonal because those are going to be the points of our hearts, and those are actually going to turn into half square triangles right here. Okay. And then the 3 inch squares are going to be the petals, but we're going to be sewing 2 inch squares onto the corners. Okay, this one is pretty simple. I really don't need the instructions at this point. I'll just walk you through it. So we're gonna draw some lines on these corners. So we're gonna need 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So 16 2 inch squares. And then we're going to diagonal, okay? So one more time. Here's my marker. Only my orange works because all my other ones are dead. So I really need to order some new ones. Oh, I just threw it. So friction, fine liner, this one is the marker. So let me get these drawn on here. One line corner to corner on the diagonal. And then I will get back to you. Okay, I've got those all with a diagonal on it. So now we're gonna grab 2 of each of the fabrics of the 3 inch square. And I really love that even if you only cut one with the fabric for these, a little goes a long way because you need so few for this block. So I like that. It's not a total like fabric eater, you know? Okay, so I'm gonna put these corners then. We'll do one corner on all the blocks, then we'll trim, iron, and then move to the second. Okay, here we go. Okay, those are all done. I've sewn right on the line. So we're going to trim a 1/4 inch off of that seam. And then we are going to go iron these. So let me trim and then I'll be back. Okay, so those are all trimmed up and now we're gonna go iron. I'll see you in a sec. Okay, there are those ones ironed. Okay, now we're gonna do the same exact thing to the other side. And then we'll trim and iron again. Okay, let's do it. Okay, so now we're gonna trim all these again. And then we are gonna go iron. But since I know what layout I'm gonna do, since I've already made a block here, I'm actually gonna cut my diagonals and sew my half square triangles, and then we'll kind of go iron all of this in one go. And now that we know what our layout is, we can put correct triangles together. So let's grab 2 of these. This is the 3 7/8 squares. We're gonna cut this right on the diagonal, so that gives us our halves, okay? And we only need 2 of these for this block. But now that we have our pattern laid out, we'll know which triangles to go with which. So I know that I'll have a blue and an orange, and I'll have an orange and a brown and a yellow and a blue together. Okay, one more. Okay, so we'll take the 2 that we know we need. All right, and so we'll do blue and yellow first, and then we'll work our way around the block. Sometimes I don't love sewing triangles together, I'll tell you that. I like other ways of making the half square triangles. But I have found if you do need to do triangles, it is much easier to line up this big point than it is for these little points. And maybe that's just because I've got big cumbersome hands, but I find it's a lot easier to get it lined up on this way. And then when we go to sew, we're gonna put the needle not right here at this edge so that it kind of like sews into it. We're gonna start the needle in the fabric so that the machine does not push our little points down, okay? Let's see. But I can see all of the fabric through my foot. So I'm in just enough that my needle will hit fabric and not air. And so you can see right there, I'm about a stitch in until it starts, but the machine did not eat my little corners. So that's just something I've learned. And maybe I just have a machine that likes to eat corners and maybe yours doesn't. That's totally possible. Okay, so I'm gonna just put those in a pile, in my iron pile, since I already have my map right here. So that was blue and yellow. Now we're gonna do blue and orange. Okay, so now we've got all of those half square triangles and we're gonna go iron all together. So I'll go grab that and I'll be back. Okay, there those all are, and there's our half square triangles. Okay, and so here is where I have deliberately deviated from the specific pattern, okay? In the pattern it says we should trim these down to 3.5 inches, okay? Which is pretty much the size that they're at right now. You really don't even trim off of these. I mean, that is like perfectly 3.5 inches, okay? But apparently I'm a heavy-handed ironer. So sometimes if like you spray too much or you push too hard when you iron, your fabric stretches, right? So sometimes you just kind of get a wonky shape. Personally is the key word here. I prefer to cut down so that I know for sure that I have exactly the size that I need. So it says 3.5, but I'm actually going to choose to cut down to 3. And before you're like, hey, don't hack into your quilt, we've already learned that lesson. It's more important for me to have straight lines than it is for me to have that 3.5 inch square. So sometimes if it goes wonky, maybe you'll have less than 3.5 inches or whatever measurement you need. Which is okay within a certain allowance, right? Your seam allowance, as long as it's hidden within that seam. But sometimes if it's too wonky, you don't get enough fabric in that seam and it'll eventually rip, or you'll sew it with the wonky edge and then things will be crooked. So for me personally, I'm going to trim this down to 3 inches so that I know that I have a perfect 3-inch square and that when it comes time to putting it together, it all fits together perfectly, okay? These top 2 points are my first priority. I need to make sure that they have their 1/4 inch seam allowance at the top of those points. So if there is any craziness, which there is, and it's not a ton, that is my priority and that's my starting line. I make sure that everything goes off of that now. So from that point, I'm going to take off a 1/4 inch of each side of these squares. And the reason for that is if we just took a 1/2 inch completely off of one side, then our points would be funny shaped, right? If I don't have anything solid, we'll use our paper here. So look at our block. If I cut a 1/2 inch off this block, look at the difference between the points. This one's huge and this one's tiny, okay? So if we do have to trim, then we need to make sure we trim equally on either side so that our proportions stay correct, okay? And so for me, knowing that that's a 1/2 inch, I'm gonna take a 1/4 inch off of each side, okay? So I'm gonna line up my ruler with that new straight line that I just made. I'm gonna move that over to 3 1/4 on my left. And then I'm going to trim this side, okay? And now I have 2 perfect sides for sure, and that is gonna be the basis for the rest of my cutting. So now we're gonna put that on 3 inches, lined up 3 inches on the bottom, lined up 3 inch on the top, and we're gonna get rid of both of these sides. So this one was a little wonky, but now it's perfectly square. And everything is gonna line up just the way that we want it to. The only thing about that is if I choose to do it once, I get to do it every time after that. The only problem that gets, or the only way that gets hairier becomes a problem is if you don't keep it consistent through the rest of your quilt. So from every block from now on, if I want this size, will have to be cut down to 3 inches, okay? So I'm gonna cut the rest of these. I'm gonna trim my half squares also to 3 inches. And then we'll start assembling. Okay, here we go. Okay, this one was super funny shaped, and just ironing and working with it just made it really funny. So I'm really glad that we trimmed down. because I think that would have, if we would have left it, that one would have set something off that we didn't want. So. So when it comes to trimming the half square triangles, we don't have to be as precise about making sure our cuts are even all the way around. The only thing that's really important is that we keep our diagonal on this seam with that diagonal. That way when we do trim off, it is keeping our triangles even. So it does the work for us where we don't have to be so particular. Okay, that was my last half square triangle. Now let's put this and we'll lay this block out, huh? Okay, we're gonna follow my map here though. Sometimes these quilt blocks have like black and white copies of the quilt block. I'm not sure if you've noticed that or not. And the black and white copies are so that you can actually color in and design your quilt block colors before you even put them down, which I think is pretty cool. I think it's a really handy thing that they do. This one specifically doesn't have it, but you could print this in black and white and color it anyways. Which like I said, which I do think is a great idea. If I used it and I didn't change my mind as often as I did. Sometimes what I pick to start out with and what ends up being in the quilt are not the same things, so, which is good. I'm allowed to change my mind. Okay, I want this really busy one down here. Okay, there we go. Okay, there's our block. There is our dry run. So I'm gonna do these two sets, these two sets, these two sets, these two sets, okay? And then after those ones are done, then we'll combine them in the middle, and then we'll have 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, and 4 rows, okay? Just so that you know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna fast forward through all of this, okay? Here we go. Okay, so there are our strips, and I have ironed all of my seams open, and even when I come to start ironing these seams, I'm still gonna iron it open. So now we're going to put these rows together. I'll do these two and then these two together, and actually I'll iron one with the seams open, and then I'll iron one where I just fold the seams to one side, and we can kind of look and you can kind of see what I'm talking about a little bit on laying down flat. Okay, so I'll see you at that point. Okay, here are these two pieces. Oh, that one's backwards. This one, I have opened the seam, okay? And so we're pretty much just pushing this bulk right here back on itself. But it's already pretty thin because we've spread out the bulk here, okay? So opening it up really disperses all of that bulk in there, and you can, I really wish you could like touch this. So just reach through your screen and touch this. Here, I'll hold it for you. That was weird. But I really wish that you could, because then you could really feel the difference on how that's laying down. Okay, so this one I folded to the side, okay? So right here in this blue, it feels great. It's really not thick at all. But right here on this side in this orange, it's really thick. And what's interesting is you can actually see that seam. Can you see that big seam right there? I'll kind of hold it so you can kind of compare. Do you see that? There's like a big dark shadow where that seam is. So I think it's really interesting that you can see that you fold it over. And is it wrong? Definitely not. It gets the job done. And in terms of bulk, I have definitely had chunkier intersections, okay? It's happened. But like I said, I do like to eliminate as much as possible. And I find where lots of these pieces meet, it's usually better to open your seams and just get rid of all that traffic in there. Yeah, okay, so I starched this one so that it would lay down. And that sucker's crusty. That's gonna be interesting to undo. But I'm gonna go open this seam, and then I'm gonna sew these two together. Then I'll go iron, and so by the time I'm back, we're gonna have a complete block, which is pretty exciting. Okay, there she is. So cute, so cute. Everything laid down so well in there. And so for this one, I am keeping the same pattern for every block, but when it comes to actually putting them together, they're just gonna rotate. So I actually have a third one here. Down that way, down. So it gives a little bit of variety in here. Oh my gosh, those look so cute together. And I'm actually really pumped that you can see all of them. I could fit 2 more on here. But I do think, because this background is so busy, that we're gonna do some like sashing in the middle. Let's raid my scrap bucket here. I know I do a lot of sashing, so I know I have a lot of sashing scraps. So sashing is the strips of fabric that go in between squares. Not all patterns call for them. This one, I mean, obviously is just a block, so you can do it with whatever you want. We're gonna use that one. It's too thick, but I think it'll work. I didn't use sashing in here, and so that just means that the blocks butt up. But I think this is gonna make a big difference visually to have this break. And I kind of have this creamy off-white. It's almost like a linen because it's like got like different specks of colors, other colors in it, like browns and stuff, and it's really pretty. Okay, yeah, there you go. My hand's in the way. Yeah, so you can kind of see that there's a little break right there. That's sashing. There's a little break in between, and I think I like that a little bit better than butted. I don't know, what do you think? But either way, these turned out really cute, and I'm really excited for them. It's gonna be a perfect fall quilt. I'm really not much for seasonal quilts because we cuddle with blankets year round here. But I'm really excited for this fall quilt. We'll have some seasonal decoration there. And I think I'm just gonna keep messing through those blockheads and keep printing them out, especially because they're free, right? I will not argue with the free pattern. And then we can just keep making those together. So if you have some that you'd like, feel free to tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear it, and then we can make it together. Until next time, I guess we'll see ya. Bye.